Hey, what's up, guys? It's Wells Adams, your favorite weirdo bartender from Bachelor in Paradise and host of Best in Dough. This week, I'm on the Hollywood Raw podcast, where I'm going to tell you my favorite stories from being behind the bar. And the one time that I got drunk with a lot of big celebrities after the Oscars.
Hey, guys, welcome to the Hollywood Raw YouTube page. Make sure you drop a comment, like, subscribe.
Do all the fun things.
Follow
everything. We're here to entertain you guys.
What are you waiting for? Hurry up. Let's go.
Enjoy.
All right, Wells, thank you for coming on the podcast. We're recording this on a Tuesday, but what's an average day for you? Like on a Wednesday, what are you doing? What time do you wake up? What do you do all day?
Yeah, I get up at like 5:36 every single morning, and I wish I didn't do that, but it's like a layover from when I did a morning show for 12 years in Nashville, and I got up at 4:30 every single morning and went into a radio station, and so I can't shake that, and I hate that so much because all I want to do is be able to sleep in, and my stupid wife, who I love very much, is sleeping like a snug as a bug in a rug, and I'm like, oh, God, I'm so jealous of you. So usually I'm up very early. Like today, I was telling you guys off air, I was editing my podcast. And it just depends on what time of year it is. Like if it's summertime, I'm probably in Mexico filming BIP. If it's, in the different time of year, I'm maybe filming Best in Dough or doing another show. And if I'm not doing anything, then usually I'm like playing golf or running or watching the news, which is terrible. And no one should do that. So yeah, that's kind of it, I guess.
You know, you're a busy guy. You mentioned obviously Best in Dough. You've got your podcast, your favorite thing. You've got all the Bachelor in Paradise stuff going on. I want to know from someone who's doing a lot of stuff, how often do you talk to your like manager or agents? Because mine never calls me. So how often do you get to talk?
Yeah, they only want to talk to me when it's something that has to do with making them some money. And so I like to talk to them as much as humanly possible because that means I'm making money too. But yeah, it kind of depends. My manager's really, really good. And if he knows that I'm off doing something, he'll leave me the hell alone. But yeah, I don't know. We talk a good bit about like strategy and like what the next thing is and how we can, kind of continue to grow my career and stuff. But I'd say, I don't know, 3 times a week.
Oh,
That's pretty good,
dude. I can't even get a call back. That's nice.
I think I've probably had 3 calls with my manager in the last decade. So yeah, that's pretty good. So when you did the Bachelor, when you first did the Bachelor, was every single manager and agent calling you saying we want to represent you? I'm sure like the influencer agents were calling you, or how'd you find your manager really?
Yeah, the influencer thing, that people called me for that. And that was a weird world to navigate because there are some skeezy people out there. And when you get into that part of, I guess, like your career, you don't know what you don't know. And you kind of have to make some bad decisions and realize who's good and who's bad. And there were some people kind of, the season before the season I went on of The Bachelorette, so I was on JoJo's season. The season before that was Caitlin's season, and I became really good friends with all those guys. And that was kind of the first season where you could do endorsement stuff. And so I got a lot of good advice and some bad advice from those guys about who to work with. But in terms of a manager and an agency, It's yes, you can sell crap on Instagram if you go on these kind of reality shows, but like kind of venturing out past that, like I have done, is really hard to do. And you don't need a manager or representation of an agency if you can't do the other things. And so I remember I had a meeting with my agent now, Ryan, at Craig's in LA, which is like the most like to be seen place, and I'm not that guy. And he was like, I think that, there's something about you that I could work with. I don't ever represent reality stars from like The Bachelor, but I do think that there's like a future in hosting and all this other stuff because of my background in radio. And I was like, I don't need you. I don't need to pay you 10% of what I'm doing to do what? Like, are you going to find me more jobs? And so he was like, give me like 6 months. If I find you some stuff, then we'll keep going. And we haven't looked back, and Ryan's been awesome. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened. But to have a manager or to be represented by an agency, which I also am, is not as common from the reality people as you would think.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's hard to kind of break free from that like Bachelor reality kind of name that kind of supersedes people. What do you think made you different? Because you're always very funny. At least I used to watch The Bachelor, Bachelor in Paradise all the time, especially when it was like JoJo's season, everything. But why do you think that you were able to kind of break at that mold? And do you feel like people get stereotyped or typecast into just that reality category?
Yeah, it's been really, really hard for me to kind of break out of that reality category. I mean, I'm still in it, but like kind of in a different context. But yeah, I think I was a pretty well-known name in the radio world in Nashville and kind of outside of Nashville for a long time, for like 12 years. So I understood kind of the entertainment industry just from the speaking into a microphone portion of it. So it wasn't super foreign to me to like, when I came out to LA to go reading the teleprompter is the easiest thing for an old radio host to do. Like all you do is read copy. And in radio, you only get one shot at it. Like when the red light turns on, like that's it. Whereas in TV, they're like, oh, let's do a pickup. We can do that again better. And I'm like, what? You can do this again? That's so easy, like so lazy. And I'm not trying to be like braggadocious about it. I'm just like, I did my 10,000 hours long before I came out to Los Angeles with all this stuff. So I think it was easier for me to make that transition. And also to understand audience. I think that's a hard thing for people who go into the reality world. To understand what an audience wants of you. And so there was a time in which I was doing a morning show on an alt station. I did afternoon drive on a classic rock station, and I did nights on a pop station. So those are three very, very different audiences, and you have to chameleon to them, that not hope that they accept who you are. And so you kind of have to pivot around to kind of be the person that they want you to be. And that was always something that was easy for me because I'd done it for so many years. And so when you go on these shows, like for the bartender, I'm supposed to be, and I am this guy, but like I'm supposed to be the therapist. I'm supposed to give good advice, which I do. And I'm supposed to be funny. So I can be that character like relatively easily. For like Best in Dough, when you're doing a cooking show or something, it's a little bit different. Like, if it's a show with kids, and you have to be like really caring and sweet and patient with them. And if someone's rude or something, you have to be forceful, and you kind of have to chameleon around. And I think that it was easier for me to realize what the audience needed from me in those roles and then go forward. And also that just helps production because these things need to move fast and we got to get going, and we don't have all day to shoot and all that kind of stuff. And so understanding my audience, I think, was something that helped me kind of early on in my career out here in Los Angeles.
Like you said, you did the 10,000 hours. I mean, before you went on The Bachelor, you were an accomplished broadcaster. Like you said, you talked about the jobs you did. You put in the time, you put in the effort, you put in the work, and it obviously shows. How do you feel? And I just know from like I'm a stand-up comic, and then you see people doing these videos on Vine or all those videos, and they became huge stars.
You just threw out Vine, bro?
Yeah, but I threw out Vine because Vine stars were the original. They became huge, and I'm like, man, I put in so much work for years in comedy clubs, and all of a sudden, these guys just did some videos. They became stars from their Vine videos, and then the TikTok videos. They were able to bring in more brands. But then I feel like in the last few seasons of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, a lot of the main stars, they obviously were trying to move their career more towards the TV roles. They were trying to become hosts and trying to prolong that career in the entertainment business, how did you feel when you see those people like, man, I busted my ass so long before The Bachelor to get to this point, and you're doing well. And then you see these other people who clearly, I mean, I should say clearly, but they went on the show. You say you're there for love, but now you're trying to, keep that attention, to keep that fame going a little bit in a way. How does it affect you? Do you get weird by it? How does it?
I know what you're saying. And listen, I'm the first person to be like, squeeze as much juice out of this lemon as you possibly can, because let me tell you something, it's going to go away really, really quick. And so I don't begrudge anyone for doing it. Every season I get off and there's some rap party or something, and the sweet guy that we all love starts talking to me about wanting to start hosting TV shows, and I'm like, okay, good luck. If you can do it, and you can do it better than I can, or you can, then great. But I'm not sure I don't know if a lot of people realize how much more difficult it is than it seems to be. People who are very, very good at acting or hosting, or doing any of this stuff, on actually doing anything ever. The trick is to make something that's very, very difficult look very, very easy. And, when the rubber hits the road, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so there are some people who have risen to the top who are great. Caitlin Bristow's hilarious, and she's just a natural born entertainer. Nick Vial's doing very good and in his niche of things. And so, yeah, I think I want everyone to be able to make as much money and be as successful as humanly possible. It's one thing though, when you're like, I'm not sure if you're being completely realistic about the possibilities that you're going to have going forward, myself included. I never know when the next gig's going to come. So.
Yeah, but do you think it? Well, my other question says, do you think because of chasing that star or gigs after their career, or after The Bachelor, after the camera shut down on The Bachelor, do you think that also affects the show, because the audience kind of sees it like you're not just being a real person, you're clearly here for the wrong reasons? Because at the end of the day, as a viewer, I think we fantasize hey, they're there for the right reasons, but then the other part of it is no, I think they're just trying to elevate their career.
Yeah. And I guess the same could be said for me. And I was a radio host beforehand. So I was always amazed that the storyline didn't come up in my season of you're just here to get more people to listen to you on the radio. I was waiting for that to happen, and it never did. But yeah, the bloom is off the rose, bad pun, I guess, maybe, with a lot of that stuff. People realize that they're doing it to sell diarrhea tea on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. What's funny though is the audience has course corrected. People do not get the same amount of social media following as they used to on the show, and I think that's because people can smell maybe inauthenticity from a mile away. I always say when you go on that show, any of the Bachelor shows, you better be super self-aware and know who you are, because if you don't know who you are, you're going to try to pretend to be something that you aren't, and something that you think everyone wants you to be. And the American audience is very, very smart when it comes to sniffing out BS. And the second you come across as inauthentic, you are the villain. You're there for the wrong reasons, and it happens very, very quickly. For me, I knew who I was. I was the skinny hipster radio guy who would crack wise, and who knew he was really not supposed to be there, and was just kind of holding on for dear life because the girl that I was dating didn't really like me very much. And I kind of knew my role and stuff. But yeah, it gets a little grody when you're like, I don't think you really care. I think you just want to host TRL when you get off this. I don't know if TRL still is a thing, but it was when I was a kid.
No, I get it. What's the job that you became the closest to getting, the big job that would have been, not saying a difference maker in her career, but actually, Dax almost became a sidekick on Kelly and Ryan. Dax almost became a host with Kelly and Ryan. Well, he almost became Ryan Seacrest. I almost started working on the Today Show. I was 20 hours away from getting a contract that would change my life. What's the job that you are so close to getting that didn't happen?
I was I was in the talks to host Bachelor. I think I talked to all the people about that. All the people above, big in ABC and all that kind of stuff. And there was a season of Paradise where I was just supposed to be the host. And then at the last second, we switched up and brought in a bunch of celebrities and stuff. But you kind of have to roll with that. And I think you can allow yourself a day or a week or something to like grieve over that kind of stuff. But then you have to be like, maybe the reason why this didn't happen is because something better is coming down the road. And the one thing I think a lot of people don't realize about the industry is that when you do something, a certain type of show or something, you get kind of locked in this thing called exclusivity, where you can't go do other things because you do this one thing. And that's really tough because options will come to you because you are doing this one thing, but you can't go do other things because you are doing this one thing. A very good example of that is my wife, who for 11 seasons was on the biggest freaking television show in the world. And she was offered, I think, a lot of movies to do, a lot of very big ones, and she couldn't. Now, that wasn't an exclusivity thing. That was a scheduling thing. Like they were filming Modern and she just couldn't go to Greece to film whatever movie. So there's a lot of stuff that you can't do just because like either contractually you're not allowed to or scheduling you're not allowed to. And that sucks, but it is what it is.
It's funny because when the first time you became the bartender in Bachelor in Paradise, I at least from my experience, and I'm a casual watcher of The Bachelor and stuff, but I saw it was the year they brought in all the celebrities to host. But I think, like you're saying, you almost became the host of that season. From you becoming the bartender, you became so likable, so charming, and so good. People start, at least from what I was hearing, what I was seeing, like people are like, man, Wells should be the host. Like, I think that actually worked out in your favor, where they're like, man, this guy is just so good and natural at it, where it really kind of made it like, maybe Wells should be the host of The Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise. So I think actually in that way, it actually worked out in your favor a little bit. I mean,
yeah.
That's me just thinking from the outside looking in. I mean, obviously better than I do, but
yeah, it's you see that stuff, and it's very nice and flattering and humbling, I suppose, to see that kind of like grassroots movement for like rooting for me and all that kind of stuff. I mean, even the old host of the show, Chris Harrison, went on his podcast and was like, why wasn't Wells the host? Does this make any sense to me? All that to be said, though, Jesse is like the most wonderful guy. And I enjoy. I've only done one season with him, but I super enjoyed working with him. And the one thing that maybe people don't know about Jesse is he is a very good host because he has that like Rain Man quarterback mind, where like you can give him like 3 sides of copy, and like he's like computing, but and then he's got it all like I need a prompter, or I need like 3 takes for something. Jesse is like one take wonder, hits his mark, says this thing is fucking out of there, and I'm just like, man, he is very, very good. And that's that like, getting in a huddle and calling like a crazy 3 sentence long play before a giant linebackers coming to rip your throat out. So yeah, he's great, and I think the show is in a good place because of him.
You mentioned, I'm sorry, Dad, you mentioned that you were actually in the talk step. There is some rumblings that, hey, maybe we should give Wells a chance of hosting The Bachelor. How does that come to? Like, how do you find out about that? Do they reach out to you? And just like walk me through it. Like, hey, Wells, would you be interested in hosting The Bachelor? Or does your manager reach out to you? Like, hey, they want to talk to you about it. How does that kind of come about?
Yeah, and then there were some people inside of production that really were rooting for me. And then there were people pretty high up in ABC that I think were also rooting for me. And then you set a meeting and you give them your, this is how we did it. We set a meeting. I pitched myself and said, this is why I think that I would be good at this. and they said, we disagree. I think. But I can't complain too much because they gave me my own. Well, they didn't. ABC is also affiliated with Hulu, and Hulu gave me a show where I host a cooking competition. So like, they believed in me. I just think that they were like, maybe you should be doing it. Let's see how this works first before we try anything else out.
But I think Masters of Ceremonies is a pretty dope, awesome gig as well. I do think that there is something to be said about what the franchise did really well was kind of promote within and, like take a contestant from one season, roll them over to the next season. And that really kind of, I think, kept the audience. And I'm going to be honest with you, like once they brought in, I think it was like Becca, I didn't know Becca from previous seasons. And for me, that was a hard transition because I was so used to follow the contestant, who gets to the next season. And like, I liked that dynamic. But I think Masters of Ceremony. So I think keeping it in-house with you hosting, that to me was a no-brainer. So I was rooting for you the whole time. I do want to know about being the bartender. Now, did you have like bartending experience in the past, or you're like, shit, I need to learn how to make a lot of drinks. I need to learn how to do it quick?
Yeah, so I mean, the story goes like this. On the Bachelorette, I was the guy who got the first group date rose.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you get a rose before, like days before a rose ceremony, no one cares about you. Like you're not in interview. Like there is no storyline for you. You're fine until the next week. And I realized I was like, no one wants to talk to me. Like I'm not doing interviews. I'm just gonna get drunk. So I'm a good bartender. Back in Nashville, you don't make a lot of money in radio. In the beginning of my career as a radio host, I was doing like overnights and like graveyard shifts and board hopping. So I would wait tables in the day and then I would go over to the radio station and then work overnights or work like real late. So I was a waiter and a bartender and all that kind of stuff. So fast forward to on the Bachelorette, no one wants to talk to me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start making some old fashions. So everyone's like, man, these old fashions are fantastic. So then I made a rule that if you ever got a rose before a rose ceremony, you had to get drunk with me on old fashions. So every week I was like bartending for people. And it became a thing of like, I got a rose. Like, yes, I got a rose. And like, she likes me and I'm moving on. But it's like, also I'm getting drunk with Wells this week because I got a group date rose or whatever. And so I think production saw that and they're like, what is happening with this guy? So much so that I think we filmed, they cut it, but like, I think we filmed a thing of like me being the bartender, like in Argentina or something and like pouring up drinks and like talking about their dates and stuff. And then, when Paradise came, I wasn't super keen on going, at that time. I was really comfortable with my career and I was excited to go back and work in radio. And, I knew iHeart at the time I was working for iHeart. They were very pleased with like how things had worked out with me and they wanted me to come back. And I was like, guys, I think I'm good, thank you, but no, thank you. And they were like, we really want you to come and all that kind of stuff. And, it became one of those things of, oh, okay, but maybe I can be the bartender. Like, maybe we can go do that. And, that was like, oh, that's a thought. And so that's kind of how it went and how I kind of got this weird gig. But I did before I did the first season thinking like, surely they're not going to have me actually bartend, like that they would never do that. And then I get down to the first season and they're like, okay, so you go get the ice up here. You restock from over here. Like beers are in this cooler. So go get those and walk them down. I'm like, wait, I don't have a bar back? And this, like, what? Like, they're like, no, you're doing all this. And so I was like, oh God. So I made drinks for everyone that first year and they weren't great. They still aren't. But, the second season, I was like, I need to go back to bartending school and like really kind of learn all the drinks again. And, learn the 4 count and the 8 count, all that kind of stuff again. So I can look like I actually know what I'm doing. And so, yeah, the second season I went and learned to truly bartend.
alcohol is obviously a huge thing in reality TV in general. It's always been a thing from like Jersey Shore, stock the fridge full of alcohol. So how much is like the show behind you going, hey, get those drinks in front of people because that just makes better TV in general? Or are you, hey, this person definitely needs a drink. They look like they're boring over here. This person needs to be cut off because they're having way too much fun. Like, how much control do you have over that?
I have the ultimate control over it, which is a lot of liability placed on somebody who's not paid that much money. So it was a couple years. It was a long time ago. It was probably 4 seasons ago, 5 seasons ago, that we made a drink rule that you could only have 2 drinks an hour. And so, and it was to try to protect the cast members. And so that's tough because I'm like, I don't know. So I have like a little book that I have to like write down how many drinks you've had. And you also can't have like 2 shots in an hour because like you can get pretty wasted if you just are just shooting booze every hour. But I kind of disagree with the thought of alcohol makes good television. It doesn't. It makes real sloppy television. And we're on network, like maybe if this was on HBO
VH1
or something, like then yeah, like them being sloppy and ripping wigs off and stuff would be fun. But like we can't do that. Like you'll see, like you'll put someone into interview and they're drunk and you're like, we can't use any of this because it's just like, I can't believe Jason said that about me, and you're like, God, so fucking wino. So I am more of the guy of, hey, when they're getting a little sloppy, I'll be like, hey, I know you want a rosé right now, but like, let's have a water. Like, let's pound that water real quick and then come back to me because, you're getting a little, and for the most part, people are like super pumped about that I'm like looking out for them. Cause I am, I was in their shoes. I remember how terrified I was about being portrayed as something that I wasn't. And you especially get that way when you start drinking. And so I'm trying to protect those people. But then there are the people who are like, fuck you, man, give me a drink. Like they get aggro, and girls do it too. And then I'm like, oh, okay, screw you.
Fuck you, here's your shot.
Yeah, trying to help, but enjoy going down in flames, my friend. So yeah, you'll notice if you ever watch the show, there are people who I really like, and they always tend to do very well. And then there are people who do not do well, and it's because sometimes they're rude to me. And the number one rule in life is you should never be rude to a waiter or a bartender, because that's a shitty thing to be.
As he said, masters of ceremony, masters of image as well over here.
Yeah,
I get it. So let me ask you this. So after obviously The Bachelor, you're still in, I guess, a few years later, you meet an actress by the name of Sarah Hyland. She was on the show Modern Family. She was a star of the movie Private Parts. And I say, she had a small.
Yeah.
She was a kid. Yeah. She was in Private. I'm a huge Stern fan. So she was in Private Parts.
I got a good story about that for you.
Please say.
So her father's an actor. He plays Dumbledore on Harry Potter on Broadway. But he was a struggling actor in Manhattan, whatever it was, 27 years ago. And so he went to audition for a part in Private Parts. And on the way over, he brought his daughter, and on the way over, you know how I don't know if they do it anymore, but back in the day in New York, they would sell like bootleg copies of movies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And Sarah's a huge like Disney fan, and there was a copy of Aristocats being sold, Aristocats, excuse me. And she was like, I want that. And he goes, we don't have any money for that. But if you go audition, actually, that's not how the story goes. They both went to audition for Private Parts. She went into her taping, got too nervous, couldn't do it, and left. Then they went downstairs, ran into one of those bootleg movie sellers, and there was a copy of Aristocats, and she was like, I want that. And her dad said, well, we don't have any money for that, but if you had booked that, we could afford this. And she goes, take me back up there right now. And went back up there. And that's how she booked that role. And so it was very fun. So later that night or whatever it was, 2 days later, they get a phone call from the casting director, and Ed, her father, thinks he got the role. And they were like, no, actually, this is for your daughter, Sarah. She got the role.
That's awesome.
Very cool. That's awesome. I mean, listen, it's a classic movie. I know her role wasn't like, but I mean, listen, she for the rest of her life, she could say she was in a movie with Howard Stern, which not too many people could say that because he hasn't done that many films. And
the irony is that she married a radio host, you know?
That is true. That is true. But your career starts to change. Well, your life starts to change because now you have paparazzi to deal with. And I'm not saying they're tough to deal with, but you're later in life. You're in your 30s now, and you have to worry. You don't have to worry about, but you
later in life, 30s.
Well, Justin Bieber's dealing with cameras his whole life, so he's used to it. But now you have to get used to walking to Dwayne Reed, going to get a cup of coffee, and getting your photo taken. How is that adjustment for you in the back of your mind? Just like that conscious feeling of like, man, like my life's now changing. Where the normal things I used to do, I could still do, but there's someone who could be taking photos of me, and not just paparazzi, it's regular people who are doing that too. So how was that transition for you?
Well, let's be clear. Paparazzi are not following me. But when I am with Sarah, that's when we do get papped. And so I'm just kind of there. I would say that like, it's annoying, I guess. It's a very weird feeling of like you're just like living your life, and then all of a sudden people that you don't know are kind of following you around. It's a little unsettling. But I think I also understand that like it's kind of part and parcel of the decisions that we've made to have these like weird cool jobs. For her, I feel bad because, and for all women celebrities, like the standard of beauty is unattainable and unrealistic. And so when we go out, she has to make sure that she can't be hungover and go to CVS, like you can't do that. Cause then that picture's out there, and that sucks because whenever you're hungover, all you want to do is go to CVS and get like a Pedialyte and some, Advil or something. So you have to kind of like, I don't know,
always be presentable.
You have to be more mindful of all that kind of stuff. And you also have to be more mindful of how you act. And that's like I'm a normal person. I go get drunk at a bar, but the last thing that I want is like the video of me stumbling out of it and saying something stupid. And so, yeah, you gotta be super mindful of it all. And it sucks.
Is there ever a moment though that because sometimes candid photos, like if my friends take a candid photo of me and a party, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Is there ever a moment that a pat photo comes across online that you're like, that is a great fucking photo of us? Like we look really, really good.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but like you can get sued for posting a paparazzi photo, which I think is the biggest bullshit thing I've ever heard of. That's a picture of me. And I didn't even approve of you doing it, but that's my likeness. I have ownership over my likeness. You do not. Like, I think that is absolutely ridiculous. And so, yeah, it happens sometimes where you have like really good candids and you're like, I would love to post this or whatnot. And you can't do it because they might sue you.
Well, here's the tip for you.
Okay.
If you ever do like a photo, if you reach out to the photographer, if you find out who took the photo or the agency and say, I'll give you a tag, most of the time they'll say yes.
90% of the time, yeah.
They just want the recognition and for it not to be just stolen and put up there. But I bet if you reach out and said, do you mind if I tag you and I'll post this? They'll be like, absolutely. It's crazy. I see that a lot with like Paris and Kim, these people
Amy
that are
Schumer,
everywhere they go, there are photographers following them. And if they really truly enjoy a photo, they'll reach out to the agency. And the agency is like, yep, just tag us. You're all good.
Yeah, but then you're starting to perpetuate the thing that is the problem, which is people like sitting outside your house and following you around, which is a very, very weird thing.
True. But the other way of thinking about it is the photographers, and this is what's going on right now. These photographers, a lot of them are it's not even the photographers, it's the agencies. They hope for a celebrity to use their photo on their Instagram. So then they could go after them and they could actually get more than the photo's really worth just because they post on their Instagram, which sucks. Have you guys had any kind of, well, I mean, maybe you're more wise about it now, but have you had Ocularity or some other kind of company reach out to you guys saying, hey, you used the photo, you now have to pay? Or has that happened to you guys before?
There was a time in which it was kind of explained to us by, managers and stuff that like this was happening. So make sure like we're not posting of that. So we became pretty aware of it. And then we went and like scrubbed our
Page.
social media as well. So like that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that there is, you say perpetuate it, but I think that there is a benefit of staying relevant during those in between roles. So I think that there is a place in society for photos or something, because there's so many fans out there that are constantly wanting more and more. I think that's why these, paparazzi, photo agencies, the websites, they all exist because of the curiosity behind celebrity and fame and all of that. Do you find any benefit at all to photographers being out there?
No, but it's one of those things of, I think I'm mindful of the fact that if they weren't taking photos, then maybe our careers wouldn't be where we hoped they would be. So there's a silver lining in all of it.
Yeah.
When it comes to like people who are fans of ours, it's always an interesting dichotomy between Sarah and I, because Sarah is on, people know her as somebody else, but everyone knows me as me. So the ownership of like people when they come up to you is much easier for me than it is for her, because they know her as Haley or they know her as Heidi and like all these different parts she's played. But they don't really know her as Sarah, but everyone knows me as Wells on, the bartender on The Bachelor or whatever. And so it's funny because they talk to me like they absolutely know me, which they do. And sometimes like people can get, especially when they're drunk, like they can get a little handsy with you. Like they're like, oh, you're the bartender. Hey, let me come over here. And you're like, stop manhandling me, lady. And so, yeah, that's a very a weird thing especially when you're at a bar and people are drinking. Whereas like with Sarah, they'll just be like, oh my God, I loved you in Private Parts or whatever. Like it's a different way of being approached. I think. Also, I think that like she's such a bigger name than I am, so people don't really give a shit if they're rude to me. But like they are very careful around her, which makes me very happy, because I would much rather be the one that is getting manhandled at a bar than my 5'2", 100-pound wife.
I want to know. Obviously, you've met some of her co-stars from Modern Family. Who is the funniest person in real life? Because they are it is like the group of the funniest people I've ever seen on television. But who in your mind is the funniest? Like when you're in a room or at a party, you're like, this person is hilarious.
Ty Burrell. And it's probably not even close. He is, it's Ty Burrell and then it's Jesse Tyler Ferguson. They filmed an episode of Modern in France. And so I got to go. I don't know why, but they allowed me to come. And so every night we were staying at this great restaurant, or this great hotel with a restaurant and a bar, kind of in the bottom, whatever, in the lobby. And so every night we would go get drinks and sit around with the entire cast. And it's funny because I'm a very funny person. And I was like a wacky radio host for a very long time. So I'm like, I can keep up with this, this stuff. No, like, so Jesse and Ty will just do bits like the entire night. And they're performing for each other, but also for all of us. And I swear to God, I have never laughed so hard as like just watching Jesse and Ty like do bits together. And they're like constantly coming up with them. It's so freaking
sounds
funny.
Amazing. That sounds like the best dinner ever.
Oh yeah, they're the greatest. But yeah, Ty is very, very funny.
Were any of them Bachelor fans? So did they like know you? Like any of these people know you from The Bachelor?
Only the most important one, which was Sarah. She was the one who like loved the show and watched with her mom since she was a kid and stuff. And like, that's how we met, because she was watching the show and she like tweeted like, oh my God, they're making Wells the bartender. This is so great.
So cool.
But no, and it's also very funny because I am an imposter to all of them. And they're like, who is this guy? And like, he's on what show is this? What is he doing here? Why is he drinking with us?
That was nice.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, yeah, we have the closest ratings to you guys of any other ABC shows. So relax.
Mic drop.
What was that dinner that you've been to that you're just like, I can't believe I'm sitting at the table? Like when you look around the people eating with you and you're like, man, this is fucking cool. Like I don't want to say you made it, but like I can never picture myself sitting at the table with these people. Who was at that table?
I don't know if it was a dinner, but we go to some of these like award shows, you know, like Emmys and SAG and Oscar and stuff. And I remember there's an after party after the Oscars. I think maybe the Vanity Fair part. I don't know, whatever. And so we went to that. And so it's all these people who have their Oscar in their hands and like they're drunk now and a little disheveled, and you know the tuxedo's slowly kind of coming off and you know unbuttoned and the tie is loose. And I just remember looking around and seeing a lot of people who I'm a huge fan of being drunk, eating like In-N-Out double doubles, like sitting on the floor. I mean, like, whoa, this is bonkers. But my first date with Sarah was an interesting one. I was here hosting a dog awards show. Shows you where my career was at the time. And she was at the Emmys, or going to the Emmys. And so there's a party called the Night Before the Emmys party, which is a hard ticket to get because you have to kind of be up for an Emmy to go to one of these parties, right? There's no press allowed inside, so all the actors can really kind of like let loose. And so I just finished like hosting this dog award show, and she's like, we were supposed to go get a drink, and she was like, you know what? Nothing's open here in Beverly Hills right now. Just come to this party. Just, are you wearing a suit? And I was like, yeah, I was hosting this thing. So yeah, I was wearing a suit. She was like, perfect. Come to this party. We're going to go, we'll just drink there and we can hang out there. This is our first date. So I'm like, yeah, okay. So I like Uber over to this party, not knowing anything about what the Night Before the Emmys party is. And so I walk up. This is the first time we've ever seen each other in person. Okay. And so I walk up and she's, you know, I hug her and she's like, all right, let's go in. So we go and we get a wristband. We walk in. First person we run into is Joel McHale, who I've been a fan of forever. Okay. And so he starts talking to Sarah, and he is just Joe McHale all the time. And he's just like, so how many fucking houses do you own now? And she's like, I don't know, 2 or whatever. And then he turns to me and he goes, who the fuck are you? You know, who's this guy? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm Wells. I'm a radio DJ in Nashville. And he's like, how many houses do you own? And I was like, not very many, Joel. And so like that, so that was like, oh my God. And the second person we run into is Johnny Galecki from Big Bang Theory and Roseanne and everything. And so they're chit-chatting, and when I just know him as being so funny. So anything he says, I was like, that's funny. So he goes, she's like, so Sarah goes, how's everything going? And he goes, yeah, you know, like the house burned down. So I didn't think that was literal. Like I didn't know what that meant, but I just thought that was like some sort of cliche or something. So I laughed, and he's like, why are you laughing? And I was like, did your house really burn down? He goes, yeah, in Malibu, the fires. And I was like, oh my God. So embarrassed. So he showed us a picture of the house, and all that's left was the chimney. And I go, well, at least the chimney made it, right? And he was like, who the fuck is this guy? And so I was like, 0 for 2. This is going great. So then we keep walking through, and at the time, like Westworld was huge, and Game of Thrones was huge, and so all of them were there. And this is where it was kind of funny. I'm a novelty, and my show is a novelty to people who are serious actors. But when they saw the bartender from Bachelor, like a bunch of people were like, oh my God, the same thing you guys are doing, kind of like, okay, tell me about the drink limit and tell me about, like, is so-and-so really a bitch, and started doing this. And so all these people started circling around me and asking me all these questions. And so, of course, it's like, people from Westworld, I'm like, I fucking love this show. So I'm like, I'll tell you everything, like we're going to be friends now. And I remember one of the girls from Westworld goes, hey, come here. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, hey, who brought you here? And I was like, she did. And she goes, you might want to go talk to her and not to us. And I was like, thank you so much. And so then I walked away. And I remember Sarah afterwards was like, you're more popular at this thing than I am. So that was our first date. And looking back, I think it was a little bit of like sink or swim. Like, let's see if this kid can hang at one of these things that we have to go do, that I have to do a lot. And I didn't start out super strong, but I think I ended pretty strong. And so that was a very long answer to your question.
I love it.
That was a day where I was like, look at all these famous people. Oh, I'm also a huge Firefly fan. And I love Nathan Fillion, and he played Sarah's love interest on Modern. He played like Stormy. He played the weatherman. I can't remember his name. Anyways, he came up to us and I was like, oh, I love Firefly, and like started to nerd out, and he couldn't have been more lovely and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't lost on me that he had made out with this girl more than I had at that point. But I was still pretty pumped to meet Nathan Fillion.
Oh, that's so good. That was a great story. I loved how long it was. Trust me, that every detail was amazing there. I need to know, how the hell did you team up with Brandi Cyrus for your podcast? Like, how does that friendship strike up, or you guys decide, hey, yeah, let's sit down, let's do a podcast, let's talk about our life, let's talk about our favorite things. Like, how does that come about?
Yeah, so the podcast is called Your Favorite Thing Podcast with Wells and Brandi. We've been doing it now for, I think, 8 years. So when I was a radio host in Nashville, I was doing nights on CHR, which is pop, top 40. And I knew Brandi. And obviously, like, her and her family are at the epicenter. Like, this, they are the zeitgeist of, pop culture. And so I would have her on my night show on CHR, and the whole thing was, we were trying to get a show syndicated on iHeart. And I thought, this is a no-brainer. Like, you have Brandi Cyrus, who has connections to her sister Miley, her sister Noah, her dad Billy Ray, like, and then me, who was had this recurring role on a popular show. And so we pitched it to iHeart, and we sent them, air checks and everything. And they were like, no, we're not doing this. Which I think was
that's actually shocking. I'm very surprised to hear
looking
that.
back, I was like, that was the dumbest fucking move, but whatever. But we so much enjoyed like doing radio together that I was like, you know what? Let's just do a podcast. And she was, so we went back and forth. I was like, well, you have to have a shtick with the podcast. Like, you can't just whatever. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I want to talk about whatever. And I was like, but that's not a podcast. And at the time, I think Miley was going through some BS online. Like, people were being mean to her about something, which is just like her life. And so we were at lunch at Taco Mamacita in Nashville, and she was telling me all about that. And I was like, man, there's just so much like negativity and like anger on like in the media. And I kind of had I got a little taste of it too from being on these shows. And I was like, man, I would just love to do a show where we just talk about our favorite things, like never be negative. Let's just talk about things we love. And she was like, I love that. Let's do that show. And I said, okay, well, maybe that is a shtick. So that's how Your Favorite Thing began, with just things that we love, like movies we liked, TV shows we liked, music we liked, books we like, events we like going to, just positivity and stuff. And so that's how the show was born. And I think it's been actually like a pretty healthy thing for us to do, to like an hour a week, we just talk about things we love. and like things we're grateful for and things we're happy about. And then of course, like I will also still do like my morning show bit because I don't do it anymore. And so I'll go on prep sites and like find all the things and like still do those stupid segments and bits. But for the most part, it's just us being kind of positive and stuff we like. And yeah, people love it. It's a good show, and it's gone for so many years, which is crazy to me.
What's your favorite thing about Brandi?
That's a good question. I love she is not a girl's girl. She's a guy's girl. And she can like hold her own. She's kind of a badass. She is so funny. She doesn't like comedy. And I'm like, that the show we do is a comedy, right? Like this whole thing is. And she like every movie, she's like, I don't like rom-coms. I don't like comedies. If I say like a stand-up comedian, like Andrew Santino's Cheeseburger came out recently, and I was like, this stand-up is one of my favorite things. It's so good. And she was like, I don't like comedy. And I think that's just so funny because I've never really met anybody that was like, I'm not really into that, I like dramas and stuff. So I love that about her. And she's also very, very, very normal. And I think that I love that about her because she grew up in a very not normal environment, and she's so level-headed, and she works really, really hard. She's an amazing DJ. So I'm kind of proud of how normal she is.
I love it.
Yeah, no, Wells, I really appreciate coming to the podcast because I think for you, I feel like you humanize everything. You humanize The Bachelor. You humanize Hollywood for you. So it's good to hear your perspective because I think you have a very good perspective because I think you can see what it's like from the inside in and then from the outside looking at it. So I think it's cool to kind of hear you. And that's why I think people love the podcast. Just I think you look at television, music, even reading books in a different way because you see both sides of it because you've been on both sides of it. So I mean, I really appreciate coming on the podcast and shooting the shit with us, man. It's really good, man. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like I talked way too much, and I feel
No, you are the best.
No,
I loved it. I loved your stories. You like Adam said, to kind of echo that. Like I like hearing your perspective of going into these parties and feeling like the outsider, making yourself an insider at the end of the day. Like that, I think is really cool because there's so many people I think that can relate to walking into a party. We may not have super famous A-list celebrities eating hamburgers on the floor, but you feel that and you can understand like how cool that would be for someone who, isn't necessarily an actor, but has made their way into that room. And I think that's really cool. So make sure you guys follow Wells on social media. He's at Wells Adams on Instagram. If you don't already follow him, you can listen to his podcast, Your Favorite Thing with Wells and Brandi. He's got that Hulu show, Best in Dough. And of course, you can catch him on Bachelor in Paradise, being the master of ceremonies there. And this was a fun chat, dude. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. And yeah. I'll see you around.
I really enjoyed that.
Dude, he was good. He was fun. I liked his perspective on just fame and, being in this industry. He definitely has a different perspective because he's married to someone so crazy, crazy famous.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from everyone who's done The Bachelor, he's probably he's had the best career post.
Oh, hands down. Like that's hands down by far.
Yeah. Pretty insane. Well, I take that back. Maybe Jesse Palmer.
But
Jesse Palmer.
I still think
Jesse Palmer got on Good Morning America. He was already on maybe on ESPN. Okay. He got on ESPN. The Daily Mail What's Good America? Got in Daily Mail, and now all of a sudden is the host of The Bachelor. So
that's true.
Yeah, maybe he was, and surprisingly,
but he was already a big deal before, right? I mean, with football and everything.
He was a backup quarterback. He wasn't really, he didn't have that great of an NFL career. But I mean, the guy's a monster. If you ever see Jesse Palmer, the guy's like a walking statue. Like, yes, he's a good-looking dude. Like, he's just like the all-American guy. Wells is just like a man of the people. But like I said on the podcast, when Wells the first time became the bartender, I think people were like, man, Wells is so good. I think they got to see him as a nice guy, a charismatic person, a fun guy, but also was good to the contestants. Maybe he should be the host of The Bachelor. Like he said, his name was in the running. Unfortunately, didn't happen. I guess they already had their eyes on Jesse. But he was also a great guest on the Hollywood Raw podcast. Thank you guys for watching this on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're on it all. We also have this private Facebook group called Off the Record where you guys could ask us anything and we guys talk to each other. It's just a really cool entertainment, news, celebrity, pop culture, fun group. Follow me at Adam Glyn, Glyn. Follow Dax Holt at Dax Holtz. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Guys, hope you liked that video. We got a lot more where that came from.
Hit that bell, like, subscribe, share with a friend. The best you do to support us is really doing that. And we really need the money because we need hair gel.